Hello, everyone, and welcome to the fifth of the writing course. And today's topic will be a little bit of a break from formal academic writing. Instead, this week we'll cover very briefly a little bit on non academic writing, more specifically on professional writing. And so, what do we mean by professional writing? The purpose of this lecture is a basic introduction on forms of writing, not strictly speaking academic, that is, in more professional settings. So, what we'll be covering is, for example, writing for job applications, how to write a resume, how to write to professors, etc. So, for example, writing for applications, which includes resumes, and I'm sure all of you have written resumes many times in your life. But just as a basic introduction on what a resume is, it's a short list of life accomplishments and experiences. And so the key word right there is short list, often limited in length, usually only one page, and may be customized for any professional field. So when we're writing applications, when we're writing resumes, we want to tailor it to suit the type of job that we're applying for. And usually what's included is your contact information, including email address, phone number, website, and social media handles if you have them. And so we have an objective, usually at the very top, which is a clear and concise, user-centered statement that shows how the applicant will fit into the organization, often customized for a specific organization or application. And you want to include your work experience, your education history, your skills, etc., which fit what this particular job requires. And if the job application, if the job description itself uses certain words, for example, the job description might say, we're looking for someone who's good at creative problem solving. Perhaps in your application, you can write something along the lines of, I did this, which involved me requiring creative problem solving skills. So you want to include education history, work experience, volunteer experience, as well as any other skills you might have. References, and but make sure not to include irrelevant work experiences or work experiences that are not particularly relevant to the type of job that is going to be required for this job. And so how is the information presented? Reverse chronological order, list most recent experiences first, or the order of importance, list most impressive or important representative experiences first. Use incomplete sentences that have parallel structure. Remember, this is not an essay. You don't have to use complete sentences. Give descriptive details that showcase your skills and abilities. So when you are describing what you did, you want to be as concrete and as specific as possible. You want to include numbers. Maybe in your position, you raised profitability by 10%. So you really want to include specific things using incomplete sentences. In other words, you're listing it, not writing prose. So remember, you are listing information, not writing complete sentences. And you want to use a parallel structure, meaning each bullet point that you're writing, you want to match the tense, you want to match the case, the sentence structure, the part of speech. So if the first thing you list says, I made sandwiches, maybe in the second sentence you can say, I ran a marathon. So you want to use past tense. You want to be consistent throughout. And use descriptive details. Be specific. For example, here is an example of a resume. So in terms of work experience, you see that this particular individual started out with a job that began February 2017, which is the most recent job. And then for each bullet point, you see their lead, which is present tense. And if you go to the second bullet point, you see that the word used is conduct, which is also present tense. So lead a team of 6 developers, so there's specificity there, on a project to migrate existing Angular application to React with the goal of matching existing infrastructure. So you see the way the sentence is constructed in the first bullet point. In many ways, it parallels how it's written in the second. So conduct interviews, onboard new developers to the team, and contribute to company-wide engineering standards. Now, if there's one recommendation I can make that goes beyond this example that we have, it's to show what you did in terms of success. So be concrete in terms of you raised productivity or you created a new something like that. Something that shows what you accomplished, not just what you did. So yeah, so that was just a basic talk on job applications and resumes. And we can also talk about professional correspondence. For example, let's look at that example there. Do you think that is professional? Of course it isn't. This type of correspondence you would use with your friends, your family members, but in terms of correspondence with professional people, whether it be colleagues at work, colleagues at school, it's a big no-no. Here is an example conversation with a professor. Dear Dr. Wiltsey, is it still okay for me to take my final tomorrow at 12? Let me know, KW. And then the professor replied, whatever. So the reason why the professor replied in that way is because he felt like the student was quite informal in the way he addressed the professor. So it is important when addressing professors to be professional, to be courteous, to be respectful. And here's another one. Hello, professor. Sorry about the last minute email. Can you please email me a digital version of the second midterm that we will be writing tomorrow? See already, right? This student is reaching out to the professor at the very last minute and inconveniencing the professor. I have seen the practice one outside of your office. However, I fear that the question on there will not be the exact questions from tomorrow, and there is no reason to practice questions that are not going to be on the midterm. Might as well practice the exact ones. Now, of course, this is a exaggerated example, but yeah, you want to be respectful of the teacher's time as well. So here's some instructions on how to write an email to your instructor or TA. You don't want to say something like hey, or use slang like laugh out loud or BTW. You want to, and you see here the YOU''RE, which is incorrect English grammar. You want to make sure to consult the syllabus first. Make sure you have all the information that's already been provided, and then email the professor if more information is required. A lot of it is just common sense. Professional writing checklist. Particularly look out for sentence structure and verbs in terms of the Writing Center readings I'm requiring you to do for this week. And always use, or try to always use, active verbs. Not passive verbs, but active verbs. Are my verbs constructed in active voice as much as possible? Are my verbs powerful and descriptive? Do all my subjects agree with my verbs? If you have a good verb, if you utilize a good, strong verb, then the sentence itself becomes quite powerful. There's a sense of movement and acceleration that a sentence has when you use very good verbs. And the last point, do all my subjects agree? So you want to make sure to say, so for example, I go, right? But then if you use the we, it's we went, or we, right? So when you use it in the past tense, it's we went. How have I chosen appropriate verb tenses among different sections? And usually when we're writing academic papers, we want to use the present tense. Yes, we're quoting theologians and people who lived hundreds, if not thousands of years ago, but their books are still with us today, and their books are still very much alive, and so we want to use present tense. But do I maintain consistency in my verb tenses? So even though I recommend you always use present tense, what's more important is to maintain consistency, so that if you do use a past tense, then you're consistently using past tense. So an example of an active verb is I bought the gum, instead of the passive, which is the gum was being bought by me. So do you get the difference there? The subject, I am doing the action, I bought, instead of the gum was being bought by me, which is more passive, where the purchasing of the gum is something that's happening to me, and I passively receive the action instead of I actually going out and doing the action itself. Now, I find that easy rules to follow to make sure that a sentence is in the active tense is brevity. So when I'm trying to cut words, I find that almost instinctually there's a sense in which the active verb comes out. And remember to put the subject first. So who is the main character? Is it I or the gum? And who is doing the action? And follow this structure: subject, I, the verb, the bought, and then the predicate, the gum. If you follow the subject, verb, predicate formula, then chances are it's going to be in the active tense. So for example, here's some other examples. The detective was murdered by the butler. So who's the subject there? If you want to switch that around to the active voice, then you can say the butler murdered the detective. Or John is chosen by Priscilla. You can just switch that around and say Priscilla chooses John. This lesson must be learned by Ed. Or you can just say Ed must learn this lesson. So I find another way to remove the passive voice is to try to find the word by, and get rid of the word by. Or was being bought. So the word being and the word by. If you try to eliminate those two words and formulate the sentence in a way that avoids those two words, I find that you can find the active voice. So this was a very brief lecture on professional writing, on how to write a resume, as well as just initial suggestions on how to write in the active verbs. Thank you.